And I had someone ask me if I was going to wear something under this sweater. And the answer is most definitely yes. I said, I don't go naked anywhere. I'm going to wear a shirt under the sweater, something like I'm wearing now. Hi, my name is Mark, and this is Gus, and welcome to the channel. Today, we're bringing you the results of my sparkle sweater. This has been a slightly controversial garment because I'm a man, and this sweater has sparkles in it. So let's take a look at the project, some ups and downs along the way, and the finished reveal. Stick around if you're interested, and let's get into it. This journey starts when I saw a sweater that my mentor Peg had made sometime last winter. So she came into our holiday party at the yarn shop wearing a really beautiful semi-lacy sparkle top. So she had a series of eyelets in the pattern and she held a sparkle runner alongside, I think, a sock yarn. So everyone was inspired. Everyone immediately went to the walls of the yarn shop to start looking at combinations of sequined or sparkle runners with wool. So for this project, I ended up choosing a lace weight sparkle or sequined runner, and I held it alongside a colorway that I really like from Sweet Georgia Tough Love Sock. I cast on the sweater last winter, and because it's a sock weight sweater in my size, a pretty large size, it was a slow going project. So I worked on, I don't know, maybe half of the project before putting it away for the rest of the season, and then I didn't touch it again until this fall. I'm just taking a second to look at Gus to see what he's doing behind me. So once I picked it up, I had to finish the body and then the sleeves and the collar. So not too much was left, but I wanted to include this project in my blocking video that will make its way to the channel, hopefully in the next month or 2 months. And because this project has quite a bit of lace or eyelet work in it, it springs back on itself. And I'll show a clip of that here. So the difference between the pre-blocked version and the blocked version, I think, is pretty drastic, pretty extreme, which is not always the case for garments. It really depends on the texture of the stitch you're using and the actual fiber. Another point about the blocking, because I wanted this to be a more, I guess, dramatic depiction of what blocking can do for your finished objects, I didn't pre-block. I didn't block it along the way. I didn't steam it. I didn't do anything to ensure that I liked the length as I was working on the project. I would sort of stretch it out and eyeball it, but typically in this situation, if I'm working with a stitch pattern that I know will grow quite a bit in the blocking process, I might steam it along the way or gently block it, sort of spritz it with water, pin it out, and just see how much length I'm really going to get once the final product, the finished product, is blocked. And I didn't do that, so it was a little bit more of a guessing game. So you'll see in this footage as I'm modeling, showing off the finished garment, it's plenty long for me. I think I could have had it be maybe 3 or 4 inches shorter and I would be happy. And then the sleeves are a little bit too generous for my taste. So here's another clip of me wearing the sweater that I currently have on. This is a sweater that I really like the fit of. I love the amount of ease. I love the length of the sleeves. I think some people don't like how short I make my sleeves, but I like them because I'm always wearing a watch. I'm always wearing a bracelet. And so I like for those things to be accessible. I mean, I know it's short. It looks like I had a growth spurt or something, but that's how I like it. I don't like having to push up my sleeves on my arms all the time. So back to the sparkle sweater. I think the fit is great. I like how generous it is. I love the drape of the fabric. I think the eyelets are going to show whatever I'm wearing underneath really beautifully, whether that's something like a white or a gray shirt that has a lot of contrast, or even black or navy that kind of blends into, I don't know, sort of nighttime holiday shimmer that I get from this sparkle sweater. So potentially I'm going to go back in and shorten the sleeves a bit. And for that, I'm just going to pull out the ribbing and pull back maybe 2 or 3 sections of fabric, factor in the decreases that I'm losing, and then reknit the ribbing. And I may decide that later. I might wear this a few times this season and then decide if it's worth changing the sleeves or not. I can obviously just push them up, but I do like to have the sleeves sort of matching the texture of the body where you see the eyelets. And for me, I never like for my sleeves to come past my hands. And again, I couldn't tell exactly how much sleeve I was going to get because I didn't do any blocking along the way. I really wanted to save it and let it be the transformation that it is. All right, it's Thanksgiving Day, and I'm sitting down just for a moment to talk about the neckline of this sweater and the situation I found myself in. So, as you may have seen in the footage just now, or the footage I insert here, I stayed up pretty late last night. I was excited about Thanksgiving. We've got Teresa, my best friend from New Jersey, here with us. We've got Andrea and Constantine coming today for the Thanksgiving meal. So it's festive and it's fun. And sometimes at times like this, Christmas, other holidays, things where you're with family or you're excited and looking forward to whatever's going on, I find myself staying up and not sleeping. So anyway, last night I stayed up until about 5:30 a.m. and I addressed our Christmas cards and tried to finish this sweater and do anything else I could think of to check off my list. So let's look at the sweater. I think it's beautiful. I'm so excited about it. I'm really excited to show you this before it's blocked and after it's blocked because I think it will be significantly different because of the bits of lace. So anyway, the body of the sweater is done. Yesterday I finished the sleeves, and we'll start by looking at the ribbing here on the cuff. So I'm using a 1x1 twisted rib, which I think is beautiful. I like the look of it, and it comes right out of the eyelets, which is a neat design feature. So anyway, the neck of the sweater calls for a very small amount of ribbing, still 1x1. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I used ribbing with an eyelet that I had seen on a petite knit pattern? So for that, you start with a 2x2 rib, which doesn't really show super well. I have two knits next to each other, two purls next to each other. And then you do a row where you insert an eyelet. And then you come out of the eyelet with 1x1 ribbing, which I think is really beautiful, but on this colorway, the variegation here, all of the texture on the body, I just don't think it works. I think it's too busy and it detracts from the look of it. So I'm going to try it on just so you can see what it's like on me, sort of against my face, against the shirt I'm wearing. But before I do, you can see it here. That neckline with the eyelet, which is a cool feature, but because there are eyelets all over the sweater, I just don't think we need it. I think I'd be fine with, I guess, a 1x1 rib here on the neck. The next issue is that with the number of stitches I picked up, which I think work out well with the fabric, it was a little too snug. It's almost too hard to get over my head, and I did bind off pretty loosely. So, two reasons for me to pull it back. The bind off is too tight. I don't like the eyelet that I put into the ribbing. So I'll pull it back. I think I'll have to pull it back all the way, pick up my stitches again, maybe pick up a few more, maybe 5 to 10 stitches all around extra. And then I'll do a normal 1x1 rib, and you'll see in just a moment that I don't need much ribbing at the neck. So I'll keep it short, maybe something like an inch and a quarter of ribbing, and then I'll try to bind off loosely, and hopefully it'll be a better solution. So let me try it on. Okay, here it is on. I think the sweater looks great. I'm excited about it. It fits pretty well pre-blocked, but I know I'm going to get, excuse me, I know I'm going to get some length on the sleeve. You can see how the sweater kind of coils up on itself. So when it's blocked, I think it will be much more straight. You'll see the lace, as you can see my arm through there. And I had someone ask me if I was going to wear something under this sweater. And the answer is most definitely yes. I said, I don't go naked anywhere. I'm going to wear a shirt under the sweater, something like I'm wearing now, or a long sleeve white shirt or a gray shirt, something to show the contrast through the eyelets. Anyway, you can see the neck. So this amount of ribbing, I think, works well. I like that I still see a little bit of the collar of my shirt, but the neck opening isn't huge. You can see that I could not get it over my head, so we need to address that. But I don't like the eyelet. It almost looks like a mistake. And I'll zoom in on it just so you can see it a little bit better. Yeah, I think the eyelets on the body of the sweater look great, but the eyelets up here, I don't know, it almost looks like it got eaten by moths or something sad. So I'm going to pull the neck ribbing all out, pick up a handful more stitches, and then do a one by one, probably twisted rib to match the cuffs and the waistband. And then hopefully this will be ready to black. Now for something absolutely terrifying that happened along the way. As I was wet blocking this, I had soaked it, I had pressed out the water, and then I was laying it flat on my blocking boards. And this was during the Thanksgiving holiday, so my best friend Teresa was here from New Jersey. And I had asked her if she would film, if she would hold a camera and film for me, just so I could get some more close up detail of what I do as I even something out and pin it in place on my blocking mats. And as I was doing that, working on the bottom edge of the piece, the bottom ribbing, I noticed that I had live stitches. I had stitches just popping out one after another. And I thought, what in the world? How did that happen? So I still don't know. I think perhaps when I finished my ribbing, I didn't pull the final strand of yarn all the way through the stitch. Maybe I left it in case I was going to try it on and double check before pulling it through and cutting the yarn. I have no clue. So whatever happened to it, my finished edge started to come undone, as you can see here. So I've got the nice finished edge with my bind off, and then as I go down the row, we get to this section where my stitches have just popped out, and it looks like I've lost maybe 2 rows worth in some places. So my first task is to pick up these live stitches and save them, fix them, and hopefully I'll be able to do it without having to pull out the entire ribbing at the bottom, or not the entire ribbing, but the entire round. I'm hoping I can save it without too much fuss. So let's do that together. Then I'm going to weave in my ends, do a little bit of finishing here, and the sweater will be all set. All right, pardon my voice here as I'm editing this video. I've been terribly sick, like the sickest I've been in the last several years here in Tucson. So I'm recovering from that. My voice is a little bit weak, but anyway, what's going on here on the screen? The first step, anytime you've had stitches come off your needle or dropped stitches, anything that seems like a knitting catastrophe, the first step is always to secure or rescue, to save those stitches, to get them picked back up. And as I mentioned, there are places here where my knitting has dropped down for more than just one row. So as I'm doing this, I discover that there are places where my ribbing has been pulled back 3 rows worth, and then other places where it's just 1 row or 2 rows. So I'm just squeezing the work, kind of gripping it with my finger so that it can't come undone any further. And then as I squeeze that fabric, the intact fabric, I'm going along with a pretty sharp needle tip and picking up the stitches, even if that is dropped down 1 row or 2 rows or 3 rows. And the other thing to know is that I'm not worrying about the direction of the stitch at this point. If I'm picking it up through the front leg or the back leg, I just want to get it picked up. And I think if you're too fussy with picking it up in the correct orientation, sometimes that can cause you to pull out more stitches. So if you ever discover something, like when I discovered this in the blocking process, I took a moment to look at it, but then I left it alone. I didn't want to touch it or handle it too much and have it pull out further. So you'll see here, I'm picking up the stitches. There are places where there's a lot of extra yarn, longer length, because it's dropped down more than just 1 row. So now I'm going through and attempting to secure or repair the bottom of the ribbing and the bind off. And as I get to stitches that are turned the wrong direction, I'll just flip them. I'll change the orientation before knitting or purling, and then I'll continue binding off. The trickier thing here is that when I get to a place where I've dropped more than 1 row of the bind off, then I have to stand back and take sort of a wider look at what's going on, and I have to analyze how many strands of yarn there are. If there's more than just one strand of yarn sitting in front of the work or behind the work, then I know that I've dropped down more than just one stitch. And this video isn't about that repair work, but I just wanted to mention it briefly as I'm going through this sort of sweater rescue. So in my case, it wasn't terrible. It was probably only 30 or 40 stitches across, and the trickiest thing was catching all of the strands of yarn where I had dropped the stitches for more than just one row of work. Now I'm going in with my favorite tapestry needles. These are from Tulip. They're very small, very slender, so they work well for me with worsted weight yarn, anything worsted or below. And so here with fingering weight yarn, I really enjoy having a small needle, tapestry needle, to use to secure my ends. A brief word on weaving in my ends since we're here together. Again, not the focus of this video, but I get a lot of people that watch videos of mine that are pretty new, or they might be new to certain techniques. So I always leave myself about 6 to 8 inches of tail. You saw that I trimmed it down because I had way more than I needed just for safety purposes. And I like to go first into the neighboring stitch, and I try to do something that duplicates the stitch. I try to go in and trace the direction of the yarn. I look at which direction the yarn is going, and then I trace that with my tapestry needle so that I have both a very secure join, but also one that blends in and looks discreet. After I've secured it maybe twice or 3 times, depending on the strength of my yarn, I'll start to hide the tail, both secure and hide the tail by running the length of the tail up, maybe an inch or 2 inches worth, and then I turn around and I come back through a very similar channel and I start to split the stitches. So I'm using very slender pointed tapestry needles that help me get into the stitches and split the strand of yarn, which means the tail that I'm weaving in is woven in really securely, and I'll go up a channel about an inch and a half, 2 inches worth. I'll come back down that channel, and then I'll go back up one more time. So I've gone sort of 3 different directions, all along the same channel. If I'm using something that's bulky or is bulking up too much, then I'll be mindful of that and maybe not go over the same place. But for fingering weight yarn, I can go over the same column of stitches 3 times and it's not going to be a noticeable added bulk. And then my tail is super secured. And I'll repeat this method anywhere I have a tail, so that could be the start or the end of a section, but also any joins that I've had within the project. I'm not one to tie knots. I always like to leave my tails and either do sort of a twist and weave as I go, or come at the end with a tapestry needle. As for my sleeves, here I'll do something slightly different because I am pretty certain that I'll come in at some point and redo the tail end of each sleeve just to get rid of some of that length. So I'll start the same way, sort of securing the neighboring stitch, the neighboring column of stitches, and then instead of weaving in the tail sort of 3 times, 3 directions, I'm just going to run it up into the ribbing once. And I'll still go a couple of inches so that my tail won't come out on its own, but this will allow me to dig it out later without too much fuss. I'll be able to find the tail end, pick it back out, and then pull out the ribbing and pull back the sleeve just a bit to do some refinishing. Now, the last thing to note is that using this sparkle runner was mostly straightforward, but it did have some challenges. The sequins on the runner snagged to each other really easily. So if I ever dropped my yarn or pulled the project out of my bag too quickly, or anything, it tumbles out of your lap, I found that the sequined runner would tangle on itself to the point where it was impossible to untangle it. So I have these long strands, not too many, maybe 5 or 6 in the whole sweater, on the inside that I couldn't get past the tangle, so I just kept knitting and I tucked the tangle, sort of the extra length, on the inside of the sweater. And I thought I'll come back at the end, I'll tie these parts off and I'll snip them. And because it's a sequined yarn, the sequins aren't going anywhere. And here we are. I really like it. I think it looks nice on me. I'm still not sold on the sleeve length. I think I've got, well, you can't see it, it's off camera. I think I've got a little too much sleeve. If I put them down in front of me, I feel like Ariana Grande the way she never has hands. So I probably will pull back the sleeves just a touch so that they're not accordioned up on my arm as I wear it, but I'm happy with it. One negative that I think I'll steer away from in the future is drop shoulders. I think the drop shoulder look on me, you can see how low that shoulder is, makes it look a little too casual, makes it look like I'm pulling on my big brother's sweatshirt and it just swallows me, which kind of, I think, lends to looking like you're smaller than you are, when you wear something slouchy. But at the same time, when you wear something oversized, sometimes it just looks like it doesn't fit. And so in this case, I was imagining this sweater as a sort of dressy option, something I could wear to a holiday party, something I could wear, I don't know, when I'm in rehearsals in December at sort of a festive time of year and I want to look dressed. I don't want to look too casual or too comfy. And I think the drop shoulder looks a little too casual for me. So I showed you the fit I really like of the rounded yoke sweater earlier, and I like that because it looks, I don't know, like it's made to fit your body. I also like something with maybe more of a set-in sleeve, something that actually matches where your natural shoulder hits. So that's maybe the only downside here. The pattern was great, straightforward. I didn't get the right gauge, so I had to adjust things. I had to go to a different needle size. I had to make a different size in the pattern versus what would actually fit me. But once I had done that math and made the adjustments I needed to, it was very straightforward. Easy repeat, easy to memorize. The construction of it, I think, is wonderful. Drop shoulder isn't my favorite, but that's nothing against the design or the designer. And I think it works really well with the sock yarn and the sequins. Just looking at it here on my monitor, I'm really glad that the rows of eyelets line up, that they're not dipping and bowing. Sometimes like stripes, horizontal stripes of any kind, can make me as a very wide person feel larger than I am if they're really bending and bowing with the shifts of my body. But I think this looks, I don't know, it looks pretty symmetrical. It looks like it fits on a grid line, which I'm appreciating. And I was going to say one more thing. Oh, I'm very excited that I can wear different things under this. So right now I've got this light blue, which I don't know that I would usually put there. I think I'm going to like it better with a navy, better with white, maybe with light gray. So I'm excited that when I wear it with different things underneath, the sweater will look pretty different. So that's an added bonus. Let's see. Something else to consider is the sequin runner, because it's full of sequins. It feels a little bit different to wear. This sweater, because I used a sock yarn, is super lightweight. I mean, it feels like nothing. It gives me a little bit of warmth on my arms, but I'm sure it's not going to do anything like a normal sweater would. One, because of the eyelets, and two, because it's done out of such a lightweight yarn. And the sequins themselves, they feel a little bit different. They're not scratchy, but they do feel almost a little cold. Like you feel that plastic or the metallic element to it. So that's something to consider if you're making something with a sequined runner and it's going to be against the skin and maybe against a lot of skin, depending on what style of garment you're making. That's something to take into consideration. Here it's fine because it only touches my skin on the sleeves, and that would only be if I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt underneath, which wouldn't always be the case. But it's not scratchy. I thought it might be. It just feels a little bit cold, which, I don't know, it is what it is. I'm not worried about it because I'm not usually a terribly cold person, but it's different. Now that I've got the ends woven in, I'll show it off one more time, sort of the full look, and that'll be that. So along the way, I've called this my controversial sweater because it's sparkly, and I don't know if it's me growing up in Tennessee or just dealing with kind of stupid things that have been said in my past about what I should or shouldn't wear and do and feel. A lot of that's embedded. And so the idea of wearing something that's glittery or sparkly feels wrong. It feels like I shouldn't be doing it. So this is just me taking a step to get over some of that, move past it. And I'm so grateful for the wonderful community that I found here on YouTube. It's amazing to connect with such incredible crafters and even more incredible people all around the world from corner to corner. So thanks for being here with me. Thanks for making me feel like what I have to say is important or worth sharing. At the end of the day, these are sweaters. This is knitting. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's definitely a way to become more of who I am every day. I have made a project listing for this on Ravelry, so if you want to know more about the yarns I used or more about the exact modifications I made, feel free to check that out over on Ravelry. You can find me there at MakerMarkKnits. You can also find me on Instagram, the same handle, and I always love to hear from you. So please let me know your thoughts. Let me know in a kind way if you hate the sparkle sweater, if you think that I shouldn't be wearing it because I'm a man, because of whatever reason. Um, you don't have to tell me. Or if you do, be gentle about it. Be nice. Pretend that we're actually talking in person and, you know, use the same respect you'd use with another friend. For the most part, the comments I get on all of my videos are so overwhelmingly kind. I love this community. I love hearing from you. I love knowing what you're making. I like to have the conversation as long as we are respectful. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or if you'd like to write to me directly, you can do that over on Instagram, Ravelry, or to my email. So as always, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're enjoying your projects, whatever they are. As always, happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.